People often harbor a deeply ingrained belief that success, when it finally arrives, will announce itself with undeniable clarity. They imagine a moment of epiphany, a sudden burst of recognition, or an unmistakable shift in momentum. Like you'll just know that there will be clear, tangible signs, visible progress, unstoppable momentum, an unshakable sense of confidence. The path will illuminate itself, and every step will feel like a victory. But the truth, often obscured by highlight reels and success stories, is far more nuanced. Most truly pivotal turning points don't feel like success at all. In fact, they often feel like the exact opposite. They feel agonizingly slow, riddled with uncertainty. Like nothing, absolutely nothing is working. It's in these moments of profound doubt, when the effort seems to yield no fruit, that most people choose to disengage. They leave, convinced that their endeavor was a failure, just as they stand on the precipice of a breakthrough. This sentiment echoes the profound wisdom of one of history's greatest innovators. As Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Imagine the sheer scale of that perseverance. 10,000 attempts, each one a potential dead end, a moment of frustration, a drain on resources and time. But in the moment of those 10,000 attempts, those countless trials and errors don't feel like progress. They don't feel like steps forward. They feel like proof that it isn't working. Each failed filament, each short-circuited design, each flickering bulb that refused to shine must have felt like a confirmation of impending failure. Yet Edison's interpretation was radically different. He saw not failure, but learning. And that fundamental difference in interpretation is precisely where most outcomes change. It's the fork in the road where some abandon their quest, while others, like Edison, persist to redefine what's possible. The core of this struggle lies in a fundamental human expectation. People expect success to feel obvious, linear, and immediately gratifying while it's happening. We are conditioned to seek instant feedback, clear indicators of progress, and tangible rewards for our efforts. This expectation often sets us up for disappointment. Consider a common scenario. You embark on something new, filled with initial enthusiasm and a clear vision. At first, there's an abundance of energy. The novelty fuels your drive, and small initial wins provide a dopamine hit. You're making plans, learning new things, and feeling productive. But then, inevitably, the honeymoon phase ends. Progress slows to a crawl. The initial burst of energy dissipates. Feedback becomes scarce, or worse, it's critical and discouraging. The results you anticipated simply don't match the immense effort you're pouring in. You're working harder than ever, but the needle barely seems to move. This is where our brain's inherent wiring works against us. Our brains are constantly scanning for confirmation, for signals that validate our actions and investments. It looks for clear indicators that what you're doing is working. It craves growth, recognition, movement, and tangible rewards. When those expected signals are missing, your brain doesn't simply stay neutral. It doesn't patiently wait for future developments. Instead, it defaults to a protective mechanism. It assumes something is wrong. It triggers alarm bells, whispering doubts, and urging you to retreat. This cognitive bias makes us more attuned to what isn't working than to the subtle foundational work that is actually happening. So, even when nothing has actually failed, your brain's interpretation of the lack of immediate external validation starts to make it feel like it has failed. This feeling, rather than objective reality, becomes the driving force behind the decision to quit. A crucial yet often overlooked truth about significant achievements is that most meaningful progress happens before there is any visible external proof. The foundational work, the critical iterations, the deep learning, and the subtle shifts that eventually lead to success are almost entirely invisible. Take the now legendary story of Airbnb. In its early stages, the company struggled immensely. There was no traction, no significant user base. The founders were so desperate to make ends meet that they resorted to selling novelty breakfast cereals, Obama O's, and Captain McCain's. At that moment, there was no external indication that this obscure startup would revolutionize the hospitality industry. Similarly, consider the journey of J.K. Rowling, who faced numerous rejections for Harry Potter before finding a publisher, or the countless hours an athlete spends training in solitude, far from the roar of the crowd, perfecting their craft before ever stepping onto the grand stage. The early stages of any significant undertaking are almost always invisible externally. This period is characterized by intense effort, constant adjustment, relentless iteration. You are building the infrastructure, refining the core concept, learning from mistakes, and slowly, painstakingly, laying the groundwork. But the outcome, the visible manifestation of all this labor, simply hasn't caught up yet. There's a significant time lag between cause and effect. So, from the outside, and even from your own perspective, it looks like nothing is happening. The world isn't applauding, the metrics aren't soaring, and when nothing looks like it's happening, when the external world offers no validation, it's incredibly easy to assume that nothing will happen. This assumption, born from a lack of immediate visible proof, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for many, leading them to abandon their efforts. If you've ever found yourself in that frustrating, isolating phase where nothing seems to be working, where doubt creeps in and threatens to derail your dreams, then you understand the profound importance of perspective. For daily insights and a fresh outlook on your journey, follow Daily Reset Lab for daily perspective. The pervasive feeling of failure that often accompanies these invisible phases is, more often than not, a profound misinterpretation of timing. It's a cognitive trap where our impatience and desire for immediate results distort our perception of reality. When you don't see the results you expect, a dangerous cycle of questioning begins. You start questioning everything. The fundamental idea itself, the process you've meticulously designed, and most damagingly, your own ability, your talent, your worthiness. This internal interrogation is often exacerbated by external comparisons. You scroll through social media, observe peers, or read success stories, and you compare your current, struggling situation to others who seem effortlessly further ahead. They appear to have made it, to be thriving. And the gap between your perceived reality and their apparent success feels incredibly real, vast, and insurmountable. But what you're comparing is fundamentally not equal. It's an apples to oranges comparison that leads to skewed conclusions. You are looking at your early stage, your messy, uncertain, invisible foundational work, against someone else's visible, polished, and often much later stage. You are comparing your behind-the-scenes struggle to their red carpet moment, and your brain, in its attempt to make sense of this perceived disparity, fills in the gap with assumptions. It tells you they figured it out instantly. They must have a secret formula. I'm clearly not on the right path. It rarely considers the possibility that they also went through an invisible phase, a period of intense struggle and doubt that was simply not publicized. In reality, you are often just earlier in the process. You are in the foundational building phase that every successful person or venture has had to navigate. And that misinterpretation, fueled by unfair comparisons and a lack of patience, creates immense internal pressure to leave too soon. It convinces you that your current struggle is a sign of inherent flaw rather than a natural, necessary stage of growth. The true turning point in any challenging endeavor is rarely a moment of sudden blinding clarity. It's not a grand revelation. Instead, it is almost always a quiet, internal moment of decision. It's a conscious choice made in the face of persistent ambiguity. At some critical juncture, you inevitably reach a point where the external landscape offers no clear progress, no strong, undeniable signal to continue, no guarantee, no ironclad promise that your efforts will ultimately work out. There is only uncertainty. The data might be inconclusive, the feedback mixed. This is the crucible where true commitment is forged. It's the moment when the external world provides no easy answers, and you are left to consult your inner resolve. Think of a writer facing their 10th rejection, a scientist whose experiment has failed for the 100th time, or an entrepreneur whose startup is burning through cash. The temptation to quit is immense because the logical, external indicators are not there. And in that moment of profound uncertainty, you are not choosing based on a predetermined outcome. You are not making a decision based on what is working. Instead, you are choosing based on your interpretation of the current situation. Do you see this prolonged struggle as definitive failure? Do you interpret it as a sign that you are fundamentally flawed, that your idea is doomed, or that you lack the necessary talent? Or do you choose to interpret it as simply a phase, a necessary, albeit uncomfortable stage of development, growth, and refinement, a period of incubation before the breakthrough? That singular decision, how you choose to interpret the ambiguity, determines whether you stay the course. And this is why most people don't fail, because their idea didn't work, or because they lacked talent. They fail because they leave before it has had sufficient time to work. They abandon their efforts during the invisible phase, mistaking incubation for invalidation. The fundamental problem is not always that something isn't working in an objective sense. Often, the real problem lies in our deeply ingrained expectation for it to feel like it is working. The solution, therefore, is an internal shift in perspective, a recalibration of our expectations regarding the timeline and manifestation of results. When something finally does work, when a breakthrough occurs, or a project finally gains traction, it often appears sudden to observers. It looks like an overnight success, a stroke of genius, or a lucky break, like a breakthrough that came out of nowhere. But that moment, that apparent sudden success, is almost invariably the direct result of a long, often arduous, and largely invisible period where nothing seemed to happen. It's the culmination of all the unseen effort, the quiet perseverance, the countless small adjustments made during the invisible phase. The overnight success story is almost always preceded by years of unseen struggle. Results, especially significant ones, do not appear in real time. There is an inherent, often substantial, delay between effort and outcome. This delay is a natural part of any complex process, whether it's growing a business, mastering a skill, or developing a new product. Because of this delay, the early stage feels empty. It feels unproductive, frustrating, and devoid of tangible progress, even when it isn't. Even when crucial foundational work is being done, when seeds are being planted, when critical learning is occurring, the lack of immediate external validation makes it feel like a void. So instead of asking the often demoralizing question, "Is this working right now?" which demands immediate, visible proof, a more useful question becomes, "Am I still in the phase where it wouldn't look like it is?" This question acknowledges the reality of the invisible phase and reframes the current lack of visible results not as failure, but as a natural part of the process. And that profound internal shift, from demanding immediate proof to understanding and embracing the invisible phase, changes everything. It changes how long you stay. It changes your resilience. It changes your capacity to endure the necessary period of incubation, ultimately increasing your chances of reaching the breakthrough. So, if something in your life, your work, or your aspirations feels like it's not working, if you're experiencing that gnawing doubt and the urge to quit, remember this: it may not be failure. It may not be a sign that you're on the wrong path. It may simply be the stage before it does work. It may be the invisible foundational phase that precedes every significant achievement, and the difference between those two outcomes, between quitting and succeeding, is not always determined by the objective reality. It's not always about the outcome itself. It's fundamentally about how you interpret the process, how you choose to see the struggle, and whether you have the wisdom to stay when nothing seems to be happening. For more perspective like this, for daily insights that help you navigate the unseen journey of growth and achievement, subscribe to Daily Reset Lab.